Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there and welcome to the WP Builds podcast. This is episode number 137, entitled Make Your WordPress Website Load Faster with Jan Koch. It was published on Thursday, the 18th of July 2019. My name's Nathan Wrigley from pictureandword.co.uk, a small web development agency, and we're based in the north of England. But before we start all of that, let me point you to a few things on the wpbuilds.com website. So wpbuilds.com/subscribe. There you'll find a page with a whole bunch of links to all of the places that you can find what WP Builds does. So there's our Facebook group, there is our YouTube channel, there's a couple of mailing lists that you can sign up for. Go and have a look. If you're interested in our content, go and have a look at /subscribe and you'll find out everything that we do. Okay, /deals if you want to avail yourself of coupon codes, percentages off WordPress plugins, themes, that kind of thing. Go and check it out if you're in the market to buy something, because you never know, you might get a significant amount off just by visiting that page. And /advertise if you would like to advertise on the WP Builds podcast, like the Page Builder Framework have. Do you use a page builder to create your websites? Well, the Page Builder Framework is a mobile, responsive and lightning-fast WordPress theme that works with Beaver Builder, Elementor, Breezy and other page builders. With its endless customization options in the WordPress customizer, it's the perfect fit for you or your agency. Go to wp-pagebuilderframework.com today. And we do thank our sponsors for their support of the WP Builds podcast. It certainly helps us to keep it going. Okay, before we get stuck into it, let me tell you a little bit about today's episode. It is with Jan Koch, and today we're talking about speeding up your WordPress website. The post today is entitled Make Your WordPress Website Load Faster with Jan Koch, and we talk about all of the things which you could do, which he has done to make his WordPress websites go faster. Some of it will be obvious, some of it less obvious, but we cover topics like hosting, using a minimal theme, caching, how to order the things in the cache, all sorts of different options. We go on to image optimization as well towards the end. So if that is something which you think is important, if you would like to offer that to your clients and you want to be an authority on that, check out today's episode. I really hope you enjoy it. Hello there, welcome to the WP Builds podcast once more. Thanks for making it this far. Today, all the way from Emden, I learnt the name of a German town today, in Germany, we have Jan Koch. Hello.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You are very welcome. Now, Jan is somebody that I've kind of been aware of Jan's presence largely in Facebook, and then more recently in kind of like other Facebook groups and some of the articles that he's written. And he's been brought on today because we're going to talk about WordPress speed optimizations and how to make your WordPress site load more quickly. So before we get into that, I'm going to ask a fairly generic question, Jan, because it's always good to know why we should be listening to somebody and what their experience with WordPress and so on is. So, Jan, I'm just going to ask the very general question. Tell us about your background in WordPress.
Sure thing. I started WordPress or using WordPress in 2012, so I've been playing around with it for quite a while now. Mm-hmm. I became self-employed as WordPress developer in 2013. And basically made my living building plugins, building themes and stuff, doing project-based freelance work. Recently, in the January this year, I joined a German agency as a lead developer and put my own business quite a bit up on the side, so that I had my main position basically taking up the usual 40-hour work week, and then the free time spending on WP Mastery, which is what we're likely going to talk about the most in this interview. Mm-hmm. And due to that change, I had to kind of change the business model of WP Mastery as well, because I didn't have the time to do freelance work anymore. And so I built a team that can deliver WordPress maintenance services and WordPress speed optimization services. And basically for the entire year, we focused all our efforts on learning how to make WordPress load fast. And my own website recently became a pretty good example for that because I got it to load within the 1 second range on average, with 0.6 seconds being the fastest I've measured it so far.
Wow, wow, wow. So it's an ongoing process. That's probably a good place to
Yeah,
start, isn't it? This is not
definitely.
this isn't a click a button, install a plugin, click a button, and you're done.
It's just like blogging, basically. A blog never gets finished.
Yes, yeah. So, okay, so fascinating. So we've got the URL of WP Builds Mastery .xyz. That's probably the place that you should go to. And then if you append to that / I think we've gone for WP Builds, did we in the end?
Yep.
Yeah,
WP.
just to make it easier, you're going to end up at a URL which is make-wordpress-load-faster-than-1-2nd. But that's hard to say, as I've just demonstrated. So go for wpmastery.xyz, or Z if you're in America, / WP Builds. And you're taken to a very long page that has obviously taken Jan a great deal of thought and time. And it's entitled Make WordPress Load Faster Than 1 Second, written late 2018. So maybe the best way to do it is to go through your table of contents and outline all of the processes that you would want to go through if you wanted to speed up your website. So should we take number 1 first? Number 1 is entitled Fast WordPress Hosting. I suppose that's fairly obvious, but what is it that we should be looking out for when we're going cap in hand to a host?
Yeah, that's a good question. I started this post with the obvious hosting because, for one, it's the obvious foundation for any WordPress website. And the other reason is that the hosting space is so crowded, like we had in our conversation before this recording. There's so many different WordPress hosts with all these different types of technology going on and throwing their marketing millions at everybody and his mother who's using a website. So basically, the main essence from that post is that you should stay away from shared hosting like HostGator, Bluehost, GoDaddy, and so on, with those cheap $1 to $3 per month hosting plans, because it's just technically the wrong foundation to have a fast loading website. Like, you're sharing the server literally with other websites. The infrastructure of the hosting server itself, like what services and what software is installed on the server, and how up to date the server is in terms of the versions of PHP and stuff like that, all these technical details. Those shared hosting companies don't really put an emphasis on making the websites they serve load fast. I would rather go to a host that's a bit more expensive. I'm not talking like $40 per month for a single website, but like what I recommend in this post is the Cloudways hosting. I host around, let me see, 8 servers with a combined probably 70 websites on Cloudways. Obviously, some for clients, some are mine. And with Cloudways, what I found is that it's super easy to adjust the servers based on how many visitors you get per month. So a website that has 500 visitors per month needs different server resources than a website that has 500,000, obviously. And you can just scale those servers as you grow. This is what I love the most about Cloudways.
We've kind of entered. It feels like it's been over the last couple of years that the emphasis has gone away from the price point, and people are more now looking at what you get for that price point. Although interestingly, the price point is still amazingly aggressive and competitive for some of the companies that you've just mentioned. But yeah, we're looking for things like scalability and so on and so forth, and the ease of sort of switching things up and switching things down. It's a completely different space. If you were to go back 5 years, shared hosting was just the normal, and people were talking about VPS. Ooh, VPS, and nobody
self-managed servers.
Yeah, exactly. And then occasionally somebody might have a dedicated server or something. Whereas now, with the way that you've got these containerized solutions, everything is so ridiculously easy. I guess it's just a question of going out, looking for the one that suits your needs, and finding if they've got add-on services or ways of installing things on those platforms that might make it a little bit easier for you. I know there's a whole bunch of companies that that'll do that kind of thing for you as well. So, okay, fair enough. Yeah, don't go for the shared hosting would be your advice. Okay.
What's also very important when it comes to choosing a web host is that you talk to the chat support beforehand. So in case things go south, you want somebody you feel comfortable talking to. So if the pre-sale support is bad, don't expect the aftermarket sales support or the support actually in an emergency case to be better.
Yep. Fair enough.
That's a lesson I learned the hard way when I was on a vacation with my wife, and one of our servers from a client website that was not cloud-based but a German web host went down, and we had to wait until 9 a.m. until support times opened to get the website back on. Yeah.
Ew. Oh, I know from bitter experience the the problems of hosting people's websites when you're on holiday in a tent. You get the phone out and tether your laptop to it. Great fun. Good. Yeah, well, fair enough. I think they're all good points. So essentially, go shop around, chat to support, see if they've got your back before you hop on. And great advice.
And see if they have a data center in the location where your target audience lives.
Yeah, it's a good point.
If your readers are in North America, you will want your website to be hosted in a server in North America.
It gets complicated, doesn't it, with things like CDNs thrown in and all sorts of things. But essentially, caveat emptor, do the research, and you very often you'll find that in the Facebook groups of WordPress related Facebook groups, this conversation comes up a lot. It tends to be a point of contention when people write, "What's the best host?" People tend to get a bit annoyed because that question appears so many times. But
by what measures?
Yes, exactly. A better way to phrase it is, in your experience, what are the criteria I should be looking for in a good WordPress host, as opposed to just tell me the name, because what you'll find is everybody's got a different opinion on that. Okay, let's go to the second point of your extraordinarily long and detailed article, which is all about themes and page builders. What's been your experience in this section?
That's also a section in the WordPress field that is prone to change quite rapidly, as we've seen in this year with page builders like Beaver Builder, Elementor, and stuff like that coming up really, really strong. And I think just a few years ago, I used a theme that's called the Ken from ArtBees, which has the Visual Composer page builder, and it was so bloated.
Yeah.
I mean, I used it on many, many sites because it just made things simple to build. And sometimes the clients that you have to work with, being a WordPress freelancer, don't want to pay for elegant code, basically. So they are happy with those themes that load all these portfolio items and employee custom post types and all this other stuff that they don't ever need. But as long as you can build the sites quickly enough with that theme, they're happy with it. So they don't have to pay for your time for using a theme that's well built, that's not bloated, not loading much overhead. And with, I think with this year, what the vast majority of the WordPress market saw was the rise of themes that are very quickly to load. Like my own website is built on the plain Genesis framework, and then with Thrive Architect as the page builder.
Okay.
You've mentioned yourself that you're using Beaver Builder quite a bit,
yes,
which also can load quite fast.
Yep.
And I think that's definitely the right move now with Gutenberg being a thing. We looked at the source code of this post that we use to walk through before the call, and we saw how flat the code structure actually is with Gutenberg.
Yes.
So I think it will help to make WordPress sites load quite a bit faster in the future.
It was very flat, actually. I was quite surprised. So if you go to Jan's post, wpmastery.xyz/WP build, and then do an inspect on it, you'll notice that there's hardly anything nested inside of anything else. Whereas my experience with all page builders, because of the complexity of what they are often trying to achieve, there's divs within divs within divs in order to make things possible. Whereas this is just, there's hardly anything.
And you'll see those nested divs on any other page
yes,
on my website.
Oh, okay. this page in particular. Oh, that's fascinating. So just on this one, you gave Gutenberg a go.
Yeah.
And it seems so. So there we go. That's an interesting point in itself. If you're going to produce a piece of long form content that is just content, where you don't need any other flashy, page-like qualities. Maybe you don't need sidebars, and maybe you don't need things to swoop in from the left and the right and have complicated layouts, because this is just text. Well, it's headings and paragraphs with images occupying the full horizontal row. That is really flat, isn't it? Very, very cool indeed. And presumably quite quick to write with Gutenberg as well.
Yeah, it was quite a pleasant surprise on how well you can write content in Gutenberg.
Yeah. My sort of weapons of choice, if you like, I just because of history and the fact that I use it a lot, I tend to use Beaver Builder. And on top of that, I will put, I've got a predilection for either the Beaver Builder theme or GeneratePress or Astra. I've played with those ones in particular. And I think a problem that people sometimes find when they're new to WordPress, if anybody is new to WordPress and you come across those themes, you will be beguiled if you go to somewhere like Theme Forest, because you'll be looking at those websites and thinking, oh yeah, but look what this can do. And I installed GeneratePress and it doesn't have any of that. Well, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
You're trying to avoid all of that at all costs and keep it simple.
You're hitting the nail on the head right there. Yeah.
You don't want things swooping in. You don't want custom post types and all of that. You can do that yourself later.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important aspect to talk about, because it's, again, to me, how I see it is that all those theme creators, what they need to do is they need to market their themes as the best ones possible. Mm. And the theme that gets the most use cases done probably has the biggest audience the creator can market to. Whereas themes like Astra or GeneratePress or even Genesis themes, with their very limited, say, visual options that you can have, like they don't come with much. It also narrows down the target audience for those themes quite a bit compared to the, let's say, average WordPress user who's just trying to run a simple website or a simple blog, and who wants those flashy elements and doesn't have a design background and doesn't see it as a serious business, basically, which still probably makes up the vast majority of WordPress users. Those people tend to fall very easily for those flashy themes that come with all sorts of options and functions they probably might need like 2 years down the road. Whereas with themes like GeneratePress and then the combination with the Beaver Builder plugin, it's more work to build those sites, and you need to be more skilled in building sites. But the site quality and the code quality is so much better.
That's right. I mean, you've got a team in those cases. You've got 2 teams that are just bent on making it as load as fast as possible. The page builder does add something to the amount of time. GeneratePress itself is very, very lean. But if you want the features that come with a page builder like Beaver Builder Elementor or something, you are gonna take a hit no matter what. But fascinating. So you're using Thrive Architect mostly, are you? That's your weapon of choice.
Yeah, I recently started playing around with Elementor and Astra on a copy of my own website.
Yep.
But since I got Thrive to load so quickly, there's really no need for me to spend time on switching tools currently.
Yeah, I've never really played with it. Is there a reason why is there a sort of, is there a feature of it that you found to be a killer, or is it just now one of those things where, well, I can't improve upon it in terms of speed, so I might as well just stick with it?
I came to use it because I have been grandfathered in my Thrive Leads subscription.
Okay.
I got on with Thrive Leads very early on and still have an unlimited site license.
Right.
And so it just made sense for me at some point to try out Thrive Architect. I think it was 2 years ago or something. And just really liked the functionality. I can't say it's much better or worse than other page builders from my experience. But I just as I said, I'm happy with the loading speed right now.
I think my experience with a lot of page builders is that they seem to be coalescing on a similar feature set. And as time goes on, there are one or two things which this one does that one doesn't do, and one or two other, but essentially they're all trying to achieve the same thing, and to a certain degree they can all achieve it. And my advice is always, if you're happy with one, just become really good with it. Learn its quirks, learn its nuances, learn how to do things, and then you'll be marketable. You can do things without having to learn all over again. It's just not for me anymore, that whole battle of which is better. I'm just kind of a bit over that, and I'm happy with what I've got, and I'm going to stick with it. So yeah.
100% agree.
Yeah. So we've done looking at decent hosting, themes and page builders and what have you. Let's talk about cache configuration, because this is an area where I'm really not that clever. I don't know an awful lot about it. Certainly from a technical point of view, I know what has worked for me in the past, and I've tried various things. Very often for me, it involves using a plugin, perhaps, or something like that. I mean, on my own servers, I've got a setup which works for me. It's a bit complicated, but it does work. What's your advice here? What's your plugin of choice, and what have you tried?
I've tried many things, and I've broken more websites than I can count when trying to optimize caching. I think what's most important here is that you get the foundation right with caching on the server. As you mentioned, you've got your own setup with a reverse proxy beforehand. That also comes back to the choice of hosting in the first place, because those Cloudways servers I'm using, they have multiple layers of server-side caching, which in itself speeds up the loading time. And then I have on most websites I personally use, I run the Swift Performance Pro plugin for caching. And I've just pulled up the settings page so I can talk through those main items that I've configured. And on the client sides we do for the maintenance care plans, we use WP Rocket as a caching plugin. And again, I think with caching plugins, it's similar to page builders. They all do somewhat the same. It's like only so many different variations you can cache a website. There's only so many screws you can try and turn to get the best configuration for caching. And basically what you try to do with caching is to reduce the amount of server resources used so that the server can present the website faster to your website visitors.
So, for example, having played with some of these plugins at various times, are there any that you've decided are a kind of not recommend, ones that you've okay?
Definitely. One that's free and I don't recommend is W3 Total Cache. And that's not because it's bad. I think it's a really, really good plugin, but I found it to be very difficult to get it right to configure it properly. I found that the administrative interfaces with W3 Total Cache are super complicated when compared to those very cheap paid hosting caching plugins. And I think only that time you save when using a smartly designed interface is worth paying. I think Swift Performance is like $4 a month or something like that. So it's really not a deal breaker.
Yeah. When you're doing this, is there an order that you do this in? Is there this is going to be your biggest win with a caching plugin? Because I know there's like multiple layers of options, but what order do you try to tackle things in? And do you have sort of like recommendations in terms of what could break things, what has broken things in the past, and possible problems, say, for example, with editing pages or posts, particularly with page builders with caches?
That's a really good question. The first thing I try to do when I set up a cache is I try to reduce the number of requests needed to load a website. So when you use a tool like GTmetrix or Pingdom or whatever, they show you how many resources are loaded when your website gets loaded. And I try to get those down to as few as possible, mostly by merging the JavaScript files and the style sheets. Those are two big factors, and those are also probably the two things you can do when setting up a cache that most often break your website.
Yes, I was just about to say exactly that.
So when I break a website with caching, it is because the merging is not configured properly. But what I like about the Swift Performance plugin here is when you install it, it has some sort of wizard that checks what server settings you have and how the page is structured in terms of which scripts are absolutely needed for the theme and for the plugins and stuff like that. And then you just tick a box that says merge scripts. And in my case, most often Swift Performance Pro automatically excludes scripts like jQuery.js that usually should not be merged because they are the foundation of all the other scripts.
Yep.
So that is a very handy function.
I've done this countless times, just experimenting and ticking boxes, and suddenly, it just doesn't work at all. And like you say, it's merging things which cannot be merged. In most cases, it's a question of unticking the box, and hopefully that will work. But I've also had experience where unticking the box was still left things all mangled. I had to go in and sort of manually fiddle with things. But that's the quickest win, isn't it? Merging things, but also fraught with danger. So perhaps do not test any of this on a live production website ever. Because
at least if you're currently running paid traffic campaigns.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, sorry to interrupt, but the problem with testing these things is if you have a copy of your website on a different server, like if you don't have a staging set up on the same server as your live website runs on, those settings might be different. So I found it very hard to test caching when, say, I have a local copy of the website. I've downloaded the website, installed it on my PC, and configured the caching there with a different server architecture than it is on the live website. Sometimes you have to go back in and figure out why things broke that worked on your copy.
That's a really good point. It hadn't sort of really occurred to me. I do everything on staging environments with the exact same server architecture. So, the basic premise is if it works on the staging environment, it's going to work when I push it live. But yeah, good point. If you're developing locally, that could really be different. And I suppose it goes back to the beginning where you were talking about hosting. Maybe those are some questions which you could ask right at the beginning. You've settled on, let's say, Swift or Breeze or whichever, like WP Rocket or ever. You could ask support what their experience is with their platform, with those plugins.
100%,
See what their responses are. Okay, so we managed to successfully merge various things like JavaScript and so on. What comes next? What would next be a good performance related thing that you could do with those plugins?
The next step would be to set expire setters, which can be done without a plugin if you feel brave. And if you feel comfortable editing your htaccess file directly on the server, you can set up those rules for making content expire within 1 month or something like that. And all that means is that when somebody comes to your website for a second time, the browser still has the website stored in cache, and thus the browser can show the website quite a bit faster than if it has to load the website from the server again. Other things that I really like to do that come included with Swift is image performance, which is probably the second biggest gain, besides reducing the number of requests, which is basically uploading the images in the right dimensions at first and then stripping all the unnecessary data from the image files to make the files themselves as small as possible.
We seem to be in a real... this seems like 2018 and 2019 seem to be the year of image optimization, with so many services popping up all over the place. I mean, at the moment, the ones that come to mind are there's WP Compress, there's Short Pixel, there's Smush and Smush Pro, and there's probably a whole bunch of others. And obviously, as you've said, the Swift Performance plugin comes with that inside of the plugin itself. Do you have you played with any of these and found that one was working better than another? For example, I know that like Smush, it uses your resources to do the compression.
Yeah.
So if that's important and you're paying for those CPU cycles, that could be a thing. Whereas things like WP Compress and Short Pixel, they offload that work to their infrastructure, and then once it's been done, they push it back into your media library and so on. Have you got any experience of preferring one for a particular reason, or do they basically all do the same thing?
From my experience, they basically all do the same thing, but how they work is differently, just as you said. I've tested a different service beforehand, which was, I think it was Kraken.io. And they also offload the server resources to their own server when processing the images. I think what's very important in this regard is just to be aware of the settings that you're using when optimizing images. So most of those plugins come in with lossless compression, for example, where they just strip all the metadata, like a camera model used to take the picture, or the latest Photoshop version edited the picture, or stuff like that, which couldn't be more irrelevant when embedding an image on a website. And then they also have lossy compression methods that reduce image quality, but also lead to reasonably smaller file sizes. And just as we said in the conversation before this recording, sometimes they get too aggressive and they mess up the image quality quite a bit. So as we said earlier, I would probably run this on a test site and see how, or at least have a backup that you can bring back to restore the original versions of the images before you process all the images on your website.
I know in the case of, for example, Smush, that it enables you to keep the original copy, and obviously if the intention here is WordPress speed, then what you should keep it. Why not have a backup copy in case the output is not suitable? And actually depends upon the image itself. I think, if it's a very let's say, for example, it's an image with a huge variety of colors in it, with lots of different shapes and what have you, that is going to look different. Where if it's flat colors with a bit of text on it or something, that's probably not. And having the option to back out is important. The reason I think that Smush decide to give you the option to remove the image is because they're trying to reduce your overall spend on disk space. But if that's
that's an important topic here.
Then it's not really related to the speed of the website. It's more related to the amount that you're paying for your hosting because of the hard disk resources that you're using. I've messed that up before. And in fact, I'm probably going to have to spend a bit of time this afternoon fixing up a bit of a mess that I've created yesterday for exactly this reason. I think I ticked the wrong box and I've gone and squashed images to within an inch of their lives, and now the clarity between its text on a background and the colors are such that they don't, I don't know what it is, but the image optimization didn't work between those two colors so well, and so it's really not looking all that great. So slap on the wrist for me. So notice what you're doing. But stripping out all the metadata is a no-brainer. Get rid of all that. It bears no relationship whatsoever to your website. But then, like you say, there's all sorts of ways that they can compress images. And you can download things on the Mac, for example, Image Opt-in. I think something like that, I think it's called Image Opt-in, he said.
Image Opt-in,
I think that's a Mac-only thing. And you can basically chuck it in there and it does the same thing before you upload it.
Yeah, you can also use Kraken.io has a free web interface you can use, where you can basically drag and drop the image onto their website and download the compressed version. And even when you run your website through GT Metrics and they find images that could be optimized, you can download optimized versions directly from those analysis results. I just find I'm a lazy person, to be honest, in that regard at least. So I just find it to be way more comfortable if I can just upload the files to the media library and some service whatsoever takes care of it.
I think also it's because my experience is that 100% of my clients have no idea what's going on with this. And so they'll happily take a 16 megapixel photograph on their camera consuming like 8 megabytes or something, and they'll upload it to the website, and they just sort of expect it to work. So reducing its dimensions significantly, so I don't know, 1280 or something like that, and then squashing it so that some of the metadata is gone and the image quality is reduced. In the end, they're going to thank you for that, because their bill will quickly ramp up. I have an estate agent who, every time they put a custom post on, which is a house or a flat or a property, they're uploading
need to take good pictures.
20 or 30 pictures per property from all angles, the front door, the back door, and the garden and all that. And it really quickly ramps up to gigabytes and gigabytes of data. So in that case, I have enabled it to destroy the original image, because the original image is the obstacle, and it's going to cost them a fortune.
And in such cases, you also want to make sure that the file or the theme or the page builder you're using is using the source set attribute.
Yes.
When embedding images, so that the server that the browser only loads the image in the right resolution.
Yes, that's a good point. I'd forgotten about that. WordPress added that a little while ago, didn't they? And so now I think there are some situations, if I'm right, where that doesn't quite work. Like certain configurations of mobile phones where things get a bit messed up. But it's a bit of an edge case. Mostly,
I think with mobile phones and those Retina devices, there is a JavaScript library actually for making a WordPress site Retina ready if it isn't already. And what you do is you upload the image. Say your content size or your content width is 800 pixel.
Yep.
And you want an image to go across those 800 pixel. You would upload it in 800 pixel and in 1600 pixel, and then append add to X to the image name. And then the JavaScript would automatically load the add to X version on Retina screens.
It's amazing, isn't it? The complicated nature of everything. Just simple images.
Just based on pixel density of the screen, actually.
I would imagine, though, that for example, your website is, the article that I'm looking at is, I'm going to stick my finger in the air and say it's 70% text. So let's say it's 30% of the viewport is occupied by images and 70% is occupied by text. But I'll bet that the images take up a hell of a lot more data going across the wire than the text does. So very important to look at this if you've got
that's why I also have lazy loading on the images.
Yes. Oh, I didn't notice that. I loaded it and then just sort of scrolled randomly through it, and by the time I'd got to the end, it was all good point. So there's another thing to do. Load them as and when they're needed, because what's the point in loading an image that's right down at the bottom of the page that's not being looked at? Yeah, very good point.
My website is so fast that you didn't notice it on
That's what it is. That's what it is.
Of course, that's what it is.
Do you offload your images to some other service, or is it stuck on your Cloudways server?
They are all stuck on my Cloudways server, because I'd rather have them, or as long as the website loads as fast as it does, I'd rather have them all on my own server and reduce the number of domains I need to connect to.
Yeah, again, in much the same way that I feel that images are being, image optimization is a bit of a thing at the moment. I also feel that we're on the edge of something where potentially, offloading this, that, and the other thing to all sorts of cloud-based services is going to be a bit of a thing next year, with all sorts of plugins popping up to do exactly that. There's a few.
We can actually talk about that next if you like.
Yeah,
because I have one section in that article about Cloudflare.
Yep.
Which is just such a service. And I actually use them as a content delivery network, and I try to offload all those resources, the static resources, to them. But I found that it actually slowed down the website.
Just because of the calls to and from? It was taking longer, or what was the reason that you tracked
I honestly have no idea. I just might be too stupid to set it up properly. But I wasn't able to get to those sub 1 second loading times with the Cloudflare caching activated. The only thing I use Cloudflare for now is the DNS.
Because
I found the DNS is pretty fast with Cloudways.
Yeah, that's pretty weird. I wonder why that didn't work out for you. I'm just wondering.
I assume it is because they take security quite seriously.
Okay.
Because their main use case isn't being a CDN, but securing websites. So I assume they have some sort of algorithms that process the requests and try to filter out like attacks and stuff like that,
Yes.
which might add a second or two to the loading time.
Yeah, there might be some sort of handshake going on between,
Yeah.
your website requesting something and AWS or whatever it is, sort of sending packets backwards and forwards, just confirming who you. I don't really know. That's fascinating because that's always been. I've always heard about it in terms of it's a real benefit. It does really well. I've never
Yeah.
touched it, but I've never heard of anybody not being successful with it. So that's really interesting.
Yeah. What I've noticed is when I use my GTmetrix account and I add various locations to test the website from, the loading time varies by, I want to say, 300%.
Wow.
So when I run the test from London, my data center is in Germany because I have to apply to GDPR and stuff like that,
Yep.
being based in Germany.
Yep.
I have loading times around zero 0.6 to maybe 0.9 seconds.
Wow.
When I run it from the US, I have loading times around 2.1 seconds.
Okay.
So there might be a use case for a CDN.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
at that
absolutely.
point.
Yeah. So, is your Cloudways account where physically is that box,
In Frankfurt, Germany.
and does it do? Because I don't know anything about Cloudways. Do they don't have their own CDN, or they do, or it's a paid add-on or something?
They do, and it's a quite affordable add-on, but I didn't take the time to configure that properly.
Right. Right. So presumably it's something to do with the speed of light and, packets
Yeah.
literally firing across the Atlantic to and fro,
Yeah.
because although the distance is tiny, imagine how many hops it's got to get to, it's got to go out of Frankfurt. It's got to find another router somewhere else, which then has to push it onto another router. And then eventually it finds its way over to, North America, and then it goes through various other routes and then back again.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
It
amazing.
might be a thing of physical distance, actually.
Yeah, I think it probably is. But interestingly, like you say, for a very small price,
Yeah.
you can mitigate that problem and pay Cloudways or whichever hosting company you're working with a small fee, and they'll offload all of your resources to a server closer.
Yeah.
So yeah, what's your experiences with sort of those types of services? Have you ever used them successfully and deployed it to a CDN elsewhere?
I have used CDNs for clients which work really well. If they have like a really globally distributed audience, that's probably the only use case when I ever touch CDNs. In those cases, they help even out those speed test results, as I just said, and they help to make the websites load faster all across the globe. As we said, it's a difference if you choose a CDN from a provider that is focused on security rather than loading speed itself. Because if you go with a CDN like StackPath, I assume you will get faster loading times than if you have the CDN of Securi, for example, who's focused on WordPress security.
I'm wondering, with all of this stuff, your article we've gone through all sorts of things, hosting, themes, page builders, caching, image optimization, and then like a CDN now. I'm wondering if if we're doing all of this for the end user, or are we primarily doing this for Google? Because I wonder, your website that you said there, where you managed to get it down to 0.6 if you're in proximity of Frankfurt, which is, that essentially is you click a button and it's instantly there. To all intents and purposes, that's immediate. I can't, it's the click of a finger. It's nothing. 2.1 seconds, it's not the click of a finger, but it's still... There's no way that I would be put off by that personally. I would happily give a site 2.1 seconds to load. I'd be all right with that. But I know that Google's not. So Are we doing this just for search engine, or do we have any data that you know of where people literally are so intolerant of that 2.1 seconds or whatever that they'll go away? Obviously, if it goes up to like 8 seconds or something, that's ridiculous. People really will, but... Do you think we're pushing this to the nth degree just to satisfy Google?
Certainly, Google plays a big role in this work. But what I also think is that with the current shift, and I'm not trying to get philosophical here, but in the current shift of how people use technology, the attention spans get so much shorter. And if I think about myself and I'm waiting in a line, say when shopping for groceries or something, and I'm just trying to check in what's going on a certain website I like, and that takes like 3 seconds or 4 seconds, then it might be better to have that website show up within 1 second.
Yeah.
Because I'm not intending to read the full article, but I want to see what I can read when I'm back home, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I think attention spans are dwindling to an amazing amount. The one site that constantly impresses me with its ability to load an incredible amount of data immediately is the BBC properties.
Yeah.
Over in the UK, the BBC is they do the news, they do the all of that stuff. They do programming online and everything. And it never ceases to amaze me. Even on a completely cleared out, cache-free browser, if I go to the bbc.co.uk/news page, it bam, everything immediately, all at once. And it's impressive. It's like turning the page of a newspaper. It doesn't load in sections. It's just there. It is. So whilst my caveat a minute ago was that it probably wouldn't bother me, I am deeply impressed though when I see a big site like that loading. And obviously, if you're a news property and people are coming back time and time again, that sort of stacks up, doesn't it? And I think you're right. I think especially the younger generation who are used to this technology, maybe that 2 seconds is a bridge too far.
And I think you've also touched on a very important point here, which is the perceived quality of a website that loads so fast.
Yeah.
I think it just, in terms of user experience, just as you did now do marketing for BBC because their site loads fast, I think that's exactly one of the biggest advantages in having a fast website.
Yeah, just people they'll just view it favorably.
Yeah, it's not a standard yet to have websites load within a second or two.
No, but it's coming. I can see this being another topic, so page load speeds and all that. That's really interesting. I don't know if have we gone through your points. We've gone through most of them, I think. The only one that
I think the plugins is the one we skipped, but it's I think plugins are very almost self-explanatory with good reasoning.
Yep.
Like don't use plugins or don't have plugins installed that you don't use.
Yes.
For example, if you want to go deeper into the topic of optimizing plugins, I would run your website or various pages and posts of your website through tools like GTmetrix and see which plugin loads which scripts on which website. Because, for example, the Contact Form 7 plugin, which is really popular, I found it to load its scripts on websites where I didn't have a contact form.
Right, yes, of
course. Which doesn't make any sense.
Yes. So you're saying check out if a particular plugin loads its resources into pages where it's got no business loading its resources.
Yeah,
so,
if you're serious about speed, that's a big point. Yeah.
Yes, good point. Do you is there any benefit in people not just deactivating but uninstalling particular plugin? I know from a security point of view, but I've often pondered that. I've thought, well, I've deactivated it. That's it. I can just leave it there and think I might come back to that. As an example, I've been playing around the last couple of days with image optimization plugins, and I've just disabled this and think I'll come back to it later because it's gone. It's not loading anything. It can't be doing anything. That's right, isn't it?
I think it depends on the plugin itself. I don't think that there is a global rule that uninstalling is better than deactivating.
No.
Though some plugins, I hope that's the majority, but I'm not sure. When you uninstall them, they should also clean up the database after them and delete the files properly. Like with image optimization plugins, for example, maybe they store some sort of cache files to load those images.
Yes.
And if you deactivate them, those cache files might be still present on the server, whereas when you unload them, when you uninstall the plugin, you get the option to delete those files.
That's exactly why I've done it in this particular case, because I'd spent a long time configuring the options, and I was just trying out a different solution. And I thought, well, I can't be bothered to do those options again. I know it's in the database. So yeah, it's an interesting point. Yeah, a fascinating subject. I think this is going to be a growth area in the next couple of years. And thanks for coming on and chatting to us about it today. It's really interesting. So Jan can be found at wpmastery.xyz or XYZ. And if you want to read this particular long post, which is sort of probably getting on for multiple thousands of words,
3.5,
yeah, it's wpmastery.xyz/WP Builds. Just before we finish, I always give everybody a bit of a chance to tell the audience about them, their Twitter handle, anything, Facebook group that they've got or whatever. So over to you for a couple of minutes.
Thank you so much. You can reach me on Twitter at I am Jan Koch. That's the official Twitter handle. I run a Facebook group that's called I Use WordPress, if you want to join and get some direct information. Other than that, what I do on WP Mastery mostly is sharing content on how to configure your WordPress site properly. Obviously, since we are an agency providing services in maintenance and speed optimization and basically handling your entire website for you, we've got plenty of experience that make up for good articles like the one we just walked through. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Thank you. That's great. Thanks for coming on, and thanks to anybody who's listened. Reach out to Jan if you've got any further questions. But for today, thank you, Jan.
Thanks for having me, Nathan.
Well, there you go. I hope you got something out of today's episode, and Jan Koch was able to deliver some interesting and informative information about speeding up your WordPress website. I certainly learnt a lot. There's quite a few nuggets in there that I wasn't familiar with, and I should be implementing those suggestions going forwards. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by WP and Up. 1 in 4 of us will be directly affected by mental health related illness. WP and Up supports and promotes positive mental health within the WordPress community. This is achieved through mentorship, events, training and counselling. Please help enable WP and Up by visiting wpandup.org/give. Okay, I hope you can join us next week. Next Thursday, we'll be putting another podcast episode out. Also, on a Monday, we give out our WordPress weekly news. We do an audio version as well as an email, and you can look at the body of the podcast to find out what the articles are that we're talking about. But also, in case you didn't know, at 2 p.m. on a Monday UK time, we also have a live episode in our Facebook group, wpbuilds.com/Facebook. And there you can join me and some special guests as we talk about the WordPress news, and you can join us live and comment, and it's marvellous. It's becoming a very, very friendly and interesting part of my Monday. Right, that's it for the WP Builds podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye for now.